Hello my dear YouTuber friends, and I hope you're all keeping well. Welcome to this new video, and this one is on, have you ever wondered what the stopwatch feature is for on the Logitech Flight Yoke unit? Obviously you have a real-time clock, but if you press this button you get to a stopwatch feature, as you can see here. Have you ever wondered what this is used for? Well, I'm going to show you a use for this in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. Okay, so before we jump into full screen, I want to take you through this diagram I've got on the screen there. We're going to be flying a pattern in the Cessna aircraft. And ignore this part here, the upwind leg. Basically, we'll be taking off from the runway, going on our crosswind leg, and this is where the stopwatch feature comes in handy. We'll time our crosswind leg. I'll tell you more about this in flight. Then we'll turn, basically we'll take off, turn 90 degrees, turn again on our downward leg, so 90 degrees there again, and 90 degrees on our base leg, and then when we have the runway lined up, we'll turn on our final approach and land. And here, specifically on the crosswind leg, is where the stopwatch feature comes in handy. I've actually talked to a real-life Cessna pilot here who flies Cessnas, and he said yes, in training they do actually time, often, the crosswind leg. So let's go full screen and I'll show you how this works. Okay, so in Flight Simulator 2020, go to the world map. Now you want to be looking for an airport that has runways on one of the main degrees of a compass. So you're looking for a runway that's taking off 0 degrees north, east 90 degrees, south 180, and obviously west 270. So either taking off 0009, runway 18 or runway 27. I live in the south of England and I found an airport. Now it's either pronounced Roughton or Wharton Airfield. Never actually been to this airfield. It's about an hour, as the crow flies, it's about an hour away from me, but I've never actually been to it. But if we click on this, you can see it's got a runway taking off on 09 or 27, which is ideal for us. This will make more sense once we jump into the aircraft. If we zoom into details here, you can see runway 09 or runway 27, that's ideal for us. So we're going to be taking off from runway 09. Wherever you live in the world, so we'll click set as departure there. Wherever you live in the world, try and find a runway with one of those sorts of main, taking off on one of the main degrees of the compass. So either 09, 27, 00 or 18. You can see that these other runways are slightly off. I'm going to be flying the Cessna 172. I would advise for this, if you're going to follow this, either fly the Cessna 172 or 152. I'm more used to the 172, that's why I'm choosing that aircraft. So with our runway chosen, runway 09, taking off and in easterly, exactly east, we'll go and fly. Okay, so we're on our assigned runway, runway 09. I've got the weather on scattered clouds. I would recommend something like I've got scattered clouds or clear day. Don't put on overcast day if you're practicing this pattern, because it's going to be hard to spot the runway once you're up in the air. Let's zoom in on this left display. We are on runway 09. Runways in real world will put you a few degrees off as long as we're heading roughly in that direction, the easterly direction. That's all good and proper. You could see the actual runway altitude is 650 feet above sea level. We're going to have to keep this in mind. Once we take off, we want to climb at a standard rate climb of about 75 knots. Once we get 400 feet above our runway levels, so that would be 1050 in this case, we will turn 90 degrees, in this case on a southerly heading, and then when we get on our crosswind leg, we will start our stopwatch on our flight yoke unit. So I don't want to overcomplicate things too much, and then we'll continue to climb to 1,650 feet. So it's basically 1,000 feet, more or less. It doesn't have to be exact, as long as you're roughly 1,000 feet above the runway, and then we'll try and maintain that altitude. From the crosswind leg, once we reach our 1 minute timer, we'll turn 90 degrees again to a westerly heading, and then the runway, in this case this runway here, should be parallel to us. I want to show you something here. I've got my Xbox controller connected to my PC as well, so I want to go to our drone camera, our showcase camera. Let's just increase the speed there. Pick up my Xbox controller. Now, as you can see, the runway, it's a good idea. If you're not familiar with a airport, go to your drone camera so you can get an aerial view. You can see here, this runway is pretty much parallel to these fields. So once we take off, we go 90 degrees. In this case, we're not turning right, we're going to be turning left. Time it for a minute, then once that minute is up, turn again to our, I think it'll be our westerly heading, and then when we're on the westerly heading, we'll look out of our right window. I believe that would be right, our right window, and we should see this field parallel to the aircraft, and beyond the field we should be able to spot the runway. I'll show you this once we get into flight, but it's a good idea. Go into an aerial view mode into your drone camera, or showcase mode. Go to your drone camera and just get an idea of the sort of features of the runway. So when I take off and come onto our downwind leg, I should see this field parallel to the aircraft. Like I say, I'll show you that once we're in flight. So let's go back to our cockpit, get rid of that window, and prepare for our flight. Okay, so we're all set. We're going to go full throttle, release our parking brake. We'll take off around 60 knots. Try and follow proper procedures here. Make sure our flaps is up. We don't need flaps. Take off at 60 knots and maintain a standard climb of around 75 knots till we reach 1,000 feet. So here we are, we're taking off. So once I'm using my physical yoke here to try and maintain a 75 standard rate climb here. Oops, gone beyond that now. I'm a bit rusty, you have to bear with me. I used to do these all the time, I'm just a little bit rusty. Let's try and get to that 75 standard rate climb. We're coming up to our 1,000 feet, so we'll be turning now. So we're going to try and get our compass on that westerly heading. And a good pointer for me, you can see that pointer ahead of us there. If I can get that to the center screen, on my left screen there, center of my left screen, that's the good marker for that easterly heading. Now we're going to start our stopwatch on our yoke. I'll put a timer on screen for you. Still try and maintain our 75, if we can, degree climb. We are actually coming up to our assigned altitude here. I'm going to throttle back a little bit and now start trimming our aircraft. As long as we're roughly 1,000 feet altitude above the runway, then it's all good and well. Coming up to 29-30 seconds now. It's not an exact science, as long as you maintain roughly 1,000 feet, so if it's 1,100 it's fine, 1,200. I'm going to lower my altitude a little bit because I've gone beyond where I want to be. Just using trim at the moment. 47, 48, 49 seconds. So we're coming up to our 1 minute marker on our crosswind leg. And then we'll turn on our downward leg. Here we go, that's 1 minute. So let's now turn 90 degrees again. Stop our stopwatch now. 90 degrees again. It's not a standard rate turn. Like I said, I'm a little bit rusty, bear with me. That's a little bit better. We're coming on our westerly heading now. Just trim out, get the aircraft nicely trimmed so we're not climbing or descending. And then I'm going to pause this just to show you something. So let's pause it there. If I go to my external view now, we're exactly where we want to be. As I showed you before from the aerial view, we want that field to be parallel to our aircraft. And that's perfect. Our runway is roughly here. So we've timed that and done that well. That's a good point. When you get to this point and you're practicing, it's a simulator, so just pause it. Or if you don't want to pause it, just look out to your right window and you should see the features wherever you are in the world parallel to your aircraft. So that's perfect. Let's jump back into the cockpit. Unpause the simulator. And if we look out our right window now, I want this airport, the airport to disappear roughly about 4 o'clock. I'm going to wait a little bit beyond that. I'm going to let it go well beyond our seat, behind our seat here, because I want a longer approach phase to our landing. Just come off that westerly heading a little bit. Make sure that you're heading in the correct... Try and get it exactly to the west there. In this case. So it's disappearing beyond the seat now. I'm going to wait a little bit longer. And when I start my turn, I'm going to go flaps 1 as well, just to slow our speed down. I'll link you in the description, something from the Beverly Flight Center. As long as your speed is under 145 and you're in this green arc on your speed, it's safe to go to flaps 1. Flaps 2 will be under 100 degrees. That's a good time now to go on our 90 degree turn again onto our base leg. I've gone flaps 1. Oops. My trim went a bit wild there. Like I said, I'm a little bit rusty on this, so bear with me. But it's good to show you my mistakes as well. And that's the airport. That's our landing, our runway coming up here. It's difficult to see here, but it's just there. When this gets to about here, I will start turning on our approach leg. Going to slow down and a physical throttle a bit more to get beyond that, under the 100 knots, so I can go full flaps. And that's probably a good time for me to turn 90 degrees again now onto my approach leg. Like I say, I'm not a master at this. I have just been... there we go, that's quite well timed in fact. I've just been practicing this a little bit, because I do like to do things proper from time to time. Throttle down again. Ideally, I want to be under 100 knots to safely go to flaps 2. Well, that's nicely timed. It's well worth practicing this, and this is something that real world pilots, when they're learning to fly, would practice as well. We're around 100 knots now, so I can go full flaps We'll slow down even more. I'm just going to be aware of this on this runway that I get above these trees ahead of me here. Speed is coming down nicely now into the 70s. Once we're over the runway, we'll null our throttle and just bleed off a little bit more speed and come to a nice, hopefully gentle landing. That will do. I'm going to pick up my Xbox controller again because it's got an excellent rudder feature on it using the trigger buttons. I just prefer using the Xbox controller on the ground as my rudder. Raise my flaps. That was by no means perfect, but it gives you an idea, especially of timing that crosswind leg. And the reason they time that, because it's difficult to judge how far to go out on your crosswind legs. So they time it for 1 standard rate minute, or 1 standard minute rather. And that gives you a good idea then of when to turn on your downwind leg. So it's well worth practicing. And it gives you an idea of what trainee pilots in the Cessnas may have to go through when they're learning these patterns. So there you go. Doesn't matter for this particular video. We could stop there and put our parking brake on. So there you go. That's just to give you an idea of why, or a use for that stopwatch feature on your Logitech Flight Yoke unit. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more, and I'll see you soon.